There is no such thing as safe. There is risk reduced. So here are the risks that we are aware of. Here are the risks we don't know. How does this feel to you so that you can make the decision on what you are willing to do and what risk is okay for you? In the millions and millions and millions of people who took psilocybin last year, we haven't heard about any or many who had an issue being 55 and taking psilocybin and having a family history of schizophrenia. So is that a risk that's reasonable to you? And then you can make the decision. We all have behaviors that are manifestations of repetitive thinking patterns. We can break them, and when we start breaking them, we can start living more in alignment with who we have always been but forgot. We work on ourselves as a service to others. And when we work with others, that's really a way of working on ourselves. And with these psychedelics, with these entheogens, we can see, oh, it's an abundant world. Oh, I have enough. Might not be what I wanted, but I am supported. And I can find happiness in where I am. And heaven can be on earth versus this abstract idea of somewhere else.
Hey there. Welcome to the Peakality Podcast, your new favorite spot for unlocking the best version of yourself. Ready to level up your life? We've got you. We're all about blending technology with human wisdom and the drive to be better, personally and professionally. Each week, we dig into the real stuff, strategies, tools, and mindsets that cut through the noise and help you thrive. No fluff, just practical insights from experts, thought leaders, and people who've been there, done that. And we're here to break it all down into easy steps. Whether you're kicking off a fresh start or a physician seeking to inspire your patients, we've got stories, tips, and tricks to inspire growth in each area of life. Your peak potential is calling, starting right now. Hit subscribe, join our crew, and let's move forward today. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Matt Zemon, author of Psychedelics for Everyone, a beginner's guide to these powerful medicines for anxiety, depression, addiction, PTSD, and expanding consciousness. Matt holds a master's in psychology, neuroscience from King's College London, and brings a deeply grounded, compassionate approach to cutting edge of psychedelic wellness. From writing accessible guides to pioneering new pathways for safe, transformative healing, Matt's work helps bridge science and soul in profound ways. Let's welcome Matt to the show. So let's just start with the beginning of how you even got into the psychedelic space and being a neuroscientist and where the curiosity even began. Like, how did you even get into doing what you're doing? Just starting from the beginning.
I think it's interesting when I get the question of how did you get into the psychedelic space? And I understand why people ask that question, but I want to pause there because I actually don't think I'm in the psychedelic space. I work with psychedelics and I use it, for me, primarily, I work with them in spiritual terms. So it's more of an entheogen is the word I would use. And and from time to time, I use entheogens and in community to remember who I am, to connect with spirit, to give gratitude, all those things. But most of the time is that space in between ceremony when I'm trying to take those lessons, those insights, those awakenings, those awarenesses that happen on the medicine and bring them into everyday life and bring them into washing the dishes and bring them into hanging out with friends and bring them into raising children. So I actually think I'm more like the psychedelic term would be the integration space or the spiritual space or the life space. But yeah, that's the space that I play in. And I don't know, I just thought that was worth a little bit of a rabbit hole. Let's go down there for a moment.
Appreciate the clarification on all of that, because I think that most people, you're not putting it necessarily in a box of I do this or I am this. It's more of I've studied this and this is how I practice these different modalities. And what did you refer to them as?
For the entheogens or for the...
entheogens.
Yeah,
yes,
entheogens.
exactly.
Yeah, when we're using...
That is not a common term in layman's terms used. And I think that explaining that to people and how you apply that to your everyday life was definitely worth noting, not just a rabbit hole.
I appreciate that. It's funny because it was a group of scholars back in Harvard 30, 40 years ago who they wanted to come up with a word that separated psychedelic for medical use, for psychedelic assisted therapy, for recreational use. I'm going to use psychedelics at a Grateful Dead concert. They wanted to separate that from the historical use of plants and substances for spiritual purposes. And they came up with, okay, well, then we will call them entheogens if the person has a spiritual intention, and we can call them psychedelic if it is a medical or recreational intention. And I think it's beautiful, and I love that it just doesn't carry the same baggage. And just to be super clear, I certainly work with medical professionals on how to incorporate spiritual best practices into their psychedelic practices. And I think that's important, and I think it's beautiful, and I think it's powerful work that they do. And that is part of what is shifting the cultural understanding of these medicines after 50 years of prohibition. And I often work with spiritual leaders with the use of entheogens and how they can incorporate medical best practices into their spiritual practice. And I think that's important. How do we reduce risk for participants? How do we reduce risk to change the ratios? I mean, all the amazing things are going to happen, great things, good things, mediocre things, bad things with entheogens or psychedelics. We know those things happen. How do we adjust the ratios? And I spend a lot of time thinking about that.
I love that you brought that up about how the medical side mixed with the spiritual side, and making sure that there is some accountability, responsibility when someone is going through an experience, and understanding the medical side of it, but also the spiritual. And then how do you integrate those? So how do you approach that? I mean, from a medical, but then also spiritual perspective.
I think it's interesting because this often starts from the starting point of the practitioner. So I'm going to answer your question. Where do I start from? If I'm starting from a spiritual perspective, my foundation is you're not broken. I'm not broken. I may be manifesting some behaviors. I may have some repetitive thinking patterns. I may not be living in a way that is in alignment with myself, but I'm not broken. I just forgot. So then where does the medical preparation become important? I think up front, it's important when people are going to a ceremonial experience or to an underground experience that they do some type of medical intake. And I think it's important to look at what is their family history, or what is their mental state, what are their prescriptions, what are their supplements, what is their weight, all those types of things. If you're listening to this and you don't believe your doctor has the knowledge of how to take that information and overlay that with whatever psychedelic you're thinking about, I recommend going to a neutral third party. So there are people like Dr. Ben Malcolm, or the Spirit Pharmacist. Dr. Emily Culpa with a K is another one. There's a whole psychedelic pharmacist association. Go to one of those people. Ben Malcolm, I'm going to stick with him for a minute, spiritpharmacist.com. All he does is medical intakes for people thinking about psychedelic experiences. So you take your unique prescriptions and supplements and history and stuff, and you go to him and you say, this is who I am. What do you think? Am I okay to take psilocybin? Am I okay to take ayahuasca? Am I okay to do MDMA? He's not trying to sell you a seat or a package or anything. He's just going to give you the information and remind you that there is no such thing as safe. There is risk reduced. So here are the risks that we are aware of. Here are the risks we don't know. How does this feel to you so that you can make the decision on what you are willing to do and what risk is okay for you? So I think that's the first place where medical plays a role in a spiritual or an underground practice.
Wow. Yeah, I love that there is actually an opportunity for people to go and do a medical intake form. And that makes them feel more confident in how they even approach a ceremony, like having the confidence knowing that, am I going to be okay to do this? I mean, it like at least gives them a peace of mind. I think that and having that intake form is vital. It's
vital. And Courtney, let me just stick on this for a second, because even if you went to a legal ketamine provider, and we have ketamine in all 50 states, they're going to do some type of medical intake. Here's the difference that I'm trying to make clear for your audience. Normally, when you go and you do your medical intake through the place that you're buying your thing from, I'm going to Jamaica, I'm going to Colombia, I'm going to Mexico, I'm going to this retreat, they're going to do my medical intake. Great. They're then going to look at your information and they're going to decide this is a reasonable risk or this is not. You're not typically involved in that decision. When you go to a neutral third party, they can say to you, okay, well, you've had schizophrenia in your family, but you're 55 years old and you've never experienced any symptoms. So there's no research on you because all of the clinical trials excluded you because they didn't want that 1 degree of separation. And in the millions and millions and millions of people who took psilocybin last year, we haven't heard about any or many who had an issue being 55 and taking psilocybin and having a family history of schizophrenia. So is that a risk that's reasonable to you? And then you can make the decision.
It's powerful to have a tool like that and to have somebody offer that tool. And I think that from my understanding, there's different dosages,
Mm-hmm.
The amount in which someone, could consume. And does that play a factor in that intake form? And is that intake form then shared with whatever retreat, underground organization that is hosting one of these ceremonies?
So I would take it in 2 steps. The first thing is how does the purchaser get information for themselves? And they will tell Ben or Emily or whomever, I'm thinking about psilocybin and I'm thinking about a large dose. I don't know what large dose means. That's what I'm thinking about. And in their conversation with Ben or Emily or whomever, they're going to say, well, you know what? You've never had any experience with this. And maybe you don't want to go super high, but you want to go in like this zone might be a great place to develop a relationship. And they'll just have a discussion of just ideas. Again, not prescribing, do this dose, but giving you ideas to think about. Then when that person goes to whoever's providing, I'm going to a medical clinic for ketamine, I'm going to a underground therapist with MDMA, I'm going to a church ceremony with psilocybin. They're probably going to do their own medical intake as well, and then they can talk to the practitioner and say, I've thought about it a lot. I'm thinking I want to go on a substantial dose, but I don't want to go to the moon. So I'm thinking about somewhere in between. What does that feel like to you? And then they can talk with the provider about, well, I use a particularly strong strain of psilocybin, and maybe you want to go kind of in this range. Great. That's what I want to do. But they can have a candid discussion back and forth because dose does play a difference. And really just super clear for your audience, what I'm talking about with all of this right now is macro doses, not microdoses, but substantial doses of whatever medicine you're taking for the purposes of transforming consciousness, getting clarity, looking deep within, deep inner work, not microdosing where we're just trying to fine-tune the daily experience.
Yeah, I love that you really are bringing into what that experience even is. I think a lot of people are uncertain of losing control, of not having, it's the unknown, right? So how do you explain these journeys, these experiences, and the benefits in which someone would actually find themselves having once they go through a ceremony?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because it is really hard to walk the line between sharing what has been my learning, healing, and growing using these tools and projecting on you what might happen for you in your experience. So I try to be really careful on that. What I do say is in my belief, in my experience, psychedelics or entheogens are not cures for anything. They are catalysts. And what I mean by that is when we take these medicines, we are able to enter an altered state. What do I mean by that? Well, our whole lives as humans is we're paring down our neural pathways. We are paring down the information that we see in the universe to the point where we get into the ages that we are, and this is just the way we see the world. This is my hand. That is a bird. This is how I think about my job and my wife and my kids and my everything. When we enter these altered states, neurons start to fire together that don't normally fire together, that maybe haven't fired together since we were very little. And when that happens, we are put into a state where we can remember, I didn't always think about the world the way I'm thinking about it now. Oh, that's powerful. And when we're into that state and our inner narrator is quieted down, often shame and blame and guilt, those kind of melt away. And we can look at the different things, the different stories that we have told ourselves about what's important. And what does it take to mean something? What does it take to be someone? And what does it take to be worthy of love? And in my experience, I remember, oh my God, I'm worthy of love right now. Oh my God, I am love right now. And I'm totally connected with everyone and everything. And oh my God, I'm not separate from nature. I am nature. And with those realizations, we can start looking at whatever it is that are the traumas, the scars, the goods, the bads of our lives, and look at them with fresh eyes and say, oh, no bad me. I acted at the state of awareness at that moment of time, and this is what happened. And I see the lesson now. No bad me, no bad them. I see it. And I get to take that forward. So it's not that this Western medicine came in and boop, healed you and numbed the symptoms. No. It brings the things that are hard often right up to us where we can see them, we can discover it, we can process it, we can transmute it. Yeah, so not cures. These are catalysts. And then what the experience is varies radically for each person. But the ability to break those radical thinking patterns, once we can do that, we can start breaking the behaviors that spring from those patterns. So for some of us, I experience depression or anxiety or OCD or I overeat or I undereat or I'm a workaholic or I gamble too much or whatever. We all have behaviors that are manifestations of repetitive thinking patterns. We can break them, and when we start breaking them, we can start living more in alignment with who we have always been but forgot.
Yeah. Wow, that's really powerful. Who we've always been but just forgot. And I think that's an empowering way to look at an experience like this. And then when you have this powerful experience, this journey, what is that integration? You're talking about, how you interact with your family, how you do the dishes, how you interact every single day in life. Like, what does that integration look like after you have these aha moments? I mean, how does that play out for you so that somebody doesn't go back to those old behaviors?
And they might, and that's okay. But so let me rephrase the question. If I want to keep the efficacy, make this experience last as long as possible, what are the best practices? And the best practice is the same whether you're doing this medically or spiritually or anything in between. The best practice is to have someone that you can remember with. So for some people in the medical world, that's going to be a therapist or a coach. Okay, great. What are they really doing? They're talking to you to try to get you to remember where the stories are and where the reality is. In spiritual practice, it might be a coach or a spiritual director or a chaplain or a pastor or a rabbi, but it also could be community. And in why do we have somewhere between 500 and 1,000 entheogenic churches in America right now. And these are communities that use these tools as sacraments. They use these tools in a community setting to connect again with spirit, to remember who we are, and to do this individual work together so that when we move into the quote unquote real world, we can look at each other and can remind each other. And when something stressful is happening, I can call my friend and he can say, how's that working for you? I don't think it's working for me. Of course it's working for you. You just haven't given it enough time yet. Oh, okay, I forgot. Or he can remind me, you are a beautiful and powerful man. You are a creative being. And it's so lovely to be able to, I don't know. Let me try it this way. I felt so lonely before psychedelics. I worked, I'd come home, I'd have dinner with the family, I'd work some more, maybe watch a show, go to bed. That was my life. And I just felt alone in this world. And realizing, no, I'm not alone. I've never been alone. And then now having other people to have that experience with, it's so beautiful and it's so fulfilling for me. Does that answer your question?
Is that how yeah, very much so. And is that how you got into this? Because you yourself were unsatisfied with your life in many ways. You felt alone and that you wanted to find an alternative method in which would help get you to have an understanding. I mean, what was that catalyst that kind of brought you to where you are today?
I wish I could say I really thought it out and I did all the planning that I talk about planning and on and on. I didn't. I had some friends who had hired a guide and said, "Hey, we've hired this psychedelic guide who's going to bring a bunch of mushrooms up here. Do you want to do this?" I didn't do drugs. I said, "No, I don't do that. It's not for me." And they said, "Come on, you love to learn, and this is a chance to learn about yourself. You love to travel. Think of it like a big trip, and we're all doing it. Come on." And I did it, and totally out of character for me. So I went in unprepared. I went in kind of underestimating how strong this medicine would be. And in that first experience, relatively soon in the journey, I reconnected with my mom who died when I was 22 and she was just 49 and she was there. I could feel her and I could feel her to me, to my children. I'm like, oh, she's not gone. She's just somewhere else. And in an instant, I knew that. I knew that for me. And then I realized, oh my God, I feel so safe and loved right now, which is an incredibly beautiful feeling for me. And then realized, oh my God, I don't feel this level of safety and love in my everyday life. Why not? And then I had kind of experience after experience after experience in that very first journey. And I left it thinking, I don't know what just happened. I need to learn more about this. And that led me partially down the science trail. I mean, I didn't know how to read a scientific paper. It had been 20 years since my last science class. So I went and got a master's in psychology and neuroscience to focus on psychedelics so I could better understand what's the research saying. And I traveled around and I worked with different practitioners from MDs to shaman to taitas to curanderos to maestros, trying to experience what different psychedelics felt like for me to see which one I wanted to continue having a relationship with. And that combination of the experience and the schooling is what brought us here today. Fast forward 7 years or something.
That's amazing that that one experience really has set you into this journey of exploration into just a whole new way of being, living, and then bringing it to it. So you had patients that you were working with and now, or that you are now working with, like what were you doing before? And then how did you transition into this?
Yeah, I was just an entrepreneur. I just had businesses that were non-medical, non-psychedelic, just businesses. And I don't work with patients now. I do work with medical providers who are saying, like, how can I incorporate some more ceremonial aspects into what I do? And I'll go and help them and answer questions and try to provide that information. But mostly what I do is I work with spiritual communities and trying to instill protocols and best practices to reduce risk. And then also it's my practice. I mean, this is where I periodically get to come in and do this very individual work in community. And then it's my way of reminding. Ram Dass used to say something to the effect of, we work on ourselves as a service to others. And when we work with others, that's really a way of working on ourselves. And I'm constantly talking about that. I'm constantly saying, nobody here, this community, is a shaman, is a guru, is a healer. They are just creating conditions for you to walk in. And if they've done their job right, you feel safe enough to surrender to this medicine and have your voice come up. And if you have a big experience, you had a big experience. It is not them. It is you. It is not the medicine. It is you. And going back, that I find that empowering for me, and I hope the people that I get to interact with find that empowering for them.
Yeah. And when you work with these organizations, I'm sure that you see that they operate differently. Going into my experience, I found that there was like 3 factors coming out of it that I recognized that I needed. And that was like, first, the environment, feeling safe with the organization, feeling safe with the community in which, how many people were going to be there. What was that environment even like? Who were those people, and what that could really even be. And then the second was dosage, like how much do I take, so that I'm not feeling completely out of control, but it's still working, like what is too much, what's too little, like having that understanding of the dosage and I would, wish that I'd done like more of a medical intake form, like and from a third party, because just for that confidence going in. everything is fine. But I think just for that understanding, right? And then third was the intention. Like, what is it that I'm seeking out of this experience? And I don't think that, I think that the first two are really vital. Like, so long as you feel safe, it's kind of like what you did with your first journey.
Mhm.
You kind of went into it and it was way more than you had anticipated. And you didn't have really any of that lined up, and you definitely didn't have the intention laid out. And, but you came out so much more aware of yourself and your place in this world. How do you think people should approach this? I mean, with their curious and experimenting and trying to find the right place, the right environment in which they could feel safe, because they maybe have heard
Mhm.
so great stories, some really great stories, but they're just not quite sure where to go. Maybe they don't want to go travel abroad to do it. They want to do it here, like, and they're doing their research. Like, what is it? What questions do you think that they should ask? What should they look for? How should they approach this if they're just curious and trying to understand what it is how to even
Yeah.
get involved?
I love this question so much because there's no right or wrong answer to this. There's only right or wrong for you. So what does that mean? What I encourage people to do, no matter where you're looking to have this experience, is to ask pretty much the same questions. So, and they revolve around what Johns Hopkins calls the 3 S's. So source, where did your medicine come from? Set, what is the mindset? Setting, what is the physical environment? If you're doing legal ketamine, your source is a pharmacy. You don't have to worry about where the medicine came from. Everybody else, you can ask that questions. Where do you grow your mushrooms? Where do you get your ayahuasca? Where do you source your MDMA from? Do you test it? How do we know? So those are questions about the medicine itself. Set is your mindset. Some places, let me stick with legal ketamine for a second. There are ketamine providers who believe their ideology is that it's a biochemical experience. So you can go into the largest ketamine clinics in every state, and they'll have kind of dialysis chairs, and they'll have Netflix on TVs, and people will be on their phones, and they're putting an IV in your arm, and you're having a ketamine experience, and then they send you on your way. And they believe it's biochemical. It's legal, and that's their philosophy. And if that's your philosophy, there you go. I more believe that it's a biochemical, psychosocial, spiritual process. So there are also ketamine providers who have kind of living room environments, and they're going to give you a blanket and an eye mask and a playlist, and they're going to help you prepare in advance, and they're going to help you integrate afterwards. Not right or wrong, just different. And you as a consumer need to decide what's right for you. There's a third type of ketamine provider, which is a mail order provider. They're going to send you ketamine in the mail. It can be a lozenge, it could be a shot. They're not going to do any of that preparation integration typically, or they might have a virtual person, and they're not going to be able to sit with you in your environment. But it's the most affordable way to access ketamine. So again, not right or wrong, but maybe you have to supplement by being creative, because you know what I want is a playlist, and what I want is someone to sit and hold my hand or be near me. So not right or wrong, what's right or wrong for you. When we get into the mindset, we get into intention setting. So yeah, I have Beyond the Trip, which is a preparation journal, which takes you through a whole bunch of ways to clear your mind, to think about your intentions, to set up your house for what you're going to come back to after your psychedelic experience, to think about what you're going to eat in advance. All of that's in there. It's in the Beginner's Guide to Psychedelics, and it's in the Veteran's Guide to Psychedelics. And then setting is that physical environment. So asking the people, how many people are going to be there is a big question. If you're doing one-on-one work, well, the answer is 1. But how many facilitators? Is it 1? Is it 2? I don't know. If it's group work, group means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Most of the communities I work with in the spiritual space, 18, 19, 20 people-ish in that zone. But there are groups that are 8, and there are groups that are 100. So knowing what you feel comfortable with, and again, there is no right or wrong. It's what's right or wrong for you. Setting's also important. Knowing, are there ground rules? Have we agreed that we're not going to talk to each other? Have we agreed we're not going to touch each other? Are we going to touch each other? If so, how? When? Where? With what permission? Getting all those ground rules up out front is super important. So as you're doing your research, asking those questions. Who's going to be in the room? What are the ground rules? How do you enforce them? What do you do when something goes wrong besides the facilitators? Are there, some groups call them guardians, other calls them sitters? Is there someone there that can deal with someone having a more challenging experience than someone else? Or are you short-staffed? And am I willing for that? Am I willing to have whatever level of risk that means? Again, what's right for you? But the questions are basically the same, regardless of whether you're looking at a medical, a ceremonial, an underground, or a retreat experience. Focused on source, set, and setting.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that those are very much things. I wish I had your guide prior to. I feel as though I would have been a little bit more prepared, because I didn't know what to anticipate for sure. But with that said, the experience still come, and the outcome was still really very much powerful. And the integration, journaling and meditation and really staying connected to those understandings of once you come out, I think is imperative, because otherwise you do kind of go back to old ways of being, because those are the old, you've got those neural pathways that are very much ingrained, and you, like you said, you got to see it's working, stick with it. You're building a muscle just like anything else. And I think that these are all great points that you bring up, that it's not just an experience and then you're fine. It's, okay, what can I do with this experience, and how do I integrate this into my life? And I mean, what do you think that someone could anticipate happening from, having a psychedelic experience? What have you seen the benefits and the outcomes being? You mentioned clarity, you mentioned more presence of consciousness of, how you're showing up in a given moment with your family. But what are some of those benefits that you have found that are the most profound, and why this is a beneficial tool, catalyst that could help an individual just have a better way of life and satisfaction in life?
So let me try to answer that question this way. In the ceremony, it's pretty common to have someone as young as 21 and as old as 80 in the same space. And the reason why someone might come at 21, come at 80 are very different. So when we think about what kind of outcomes might one set intentions around, or think about why might they choose to use the medicine of whatever age they're at, it's wildly different. So a healthy 70-year-old might be thinking about this final chapter of life and may want to, as the Greeks say, die before they die, and develop a different relationship with death than they've had previously. Someone with terminal cancer, may also want to die before they die, so that they can, not because it's going to change the outcome of the diagnosis, but because it could potentially change the way that they move through what life they have left, and what needs to be said, and what forgiveness needs to be given, and what love needs to be shared, and all those things. And it's amazing. We look at, Johns Hopkins, NYU, UCSF have done beautiful studies using psilocybin and cancer, and to see the end of life death, fear of death and anxiety just lift, something like 80% with one dose. It's amazing. Others may be exploring it because they are experiencing maybe something in the medical space has a diagnosis. They're experiencing depression, they're experiencing anxiety, they're experiencing OCD, they're experiencing an eating disorder, they're experiencing a substance use challenge, and they want to, what they might say, the words they might use is, I want to get rid of. But what I think they're really trying to do is, I want to get to the root of, where did this come from? Why am I feeling this? And maybe the answer is, I get to feel this, and I just need to have a different relationship with it. And maybe it is, I don't want or need to feel that anymore. And that just depends on the person and the thing. Maybe, I am using this as I am a workaholic, because I feel that if I don't do, you're not going to love me. If I don't do, you're not going to like me. You're not going to play with me. You're not going to come to the playground with me. You're not going to put me on your team. You're not going to marry me. You're not going to stay with me. You're not going to, and I work and I work and I work and I work and I don't know anything else besides pleasing you through my actions. That's neither pleasing my partner nor pleasing myself. Okay. Where did that root come from? Well, I guess I got rewarded from my parents and my teachers when I did good things. I got rewarded from my colleagues and my bosses. Okay, but was I ever satisfied with that? No. Okay. So what am I doing? Okay. So I think we all approach these medicines with different purposes. And the reason we have a couple hundred universities around the world studying them is because these different professors have different specialties, but they're all on the other side of repetitive thinking patterns. They're all on the side of cultural programming. They're all on the other side of what happens when we take someone, we raise them in a scarcity paradigm. How do they react? How do they feel? Why do we have a loneliness epidemic? Why do we have an overprescription epidemic? And with these psychedelics, with these entheogens, we can see, oh, it's an abundant world. Oh, I have enough. Might not be what I wanted, but I am supported. And I can find happiness in where I am, and heaven can be on earth versus this abstract idea of somewhere else.
Yeah. Wow. I love this. Mm-hmm. What do you feel though that organizations should do? And what is it that organizations that you wish that they would implement into their structure to make them a better, more responsible, more ethical, for so many different, depending upon the organization. Overall, what do you feel as though the organizations could be doing a better job of, and that you wish or that you found consistently lacks or is strong in?
So let's turn that question on its head a little bit, and let's gently remind each other that organizations are collections of people, and people are not in the abstracts. People have names, they live in houses, they have families, they eat, they cry, they laugh, they're afraid, they do all the things that we do. And we are people. And we organize ourselves to do certain things in these structures. And we have the opportunity, regardless of our role, whether we are, quote, manager or executive or frontline, we all can approach our role with this kind of conscious leadership. And let me back up one more second. When I realized there's no such thing as work and life, there's no separation, there's just life. And sometimes I make money, and sometimes I don't, but this is the only life I have. Once I realized that, I realized it really doesn't matter so much what I do. It matters how I do it. So then when I think about collections of people forming organizations with a common goal, a collective thing, what I would encourage the people I'm coaching or talking with is, how do you do that with the same level of awareness and love and caring that you do with everything else in your life? And we're going to, that effectively, for many of us, an organization becomes a family of choice where we're going to spend a lot of time. How do we bring our full selves to that experience? And then how do we do that in a very cooperative way, just like nature is cooperative in its dealings with us? And then how do I not get so wrapped up around this outcome didn't happen the way I wanted it to? Okay. No bad me. It is what it is. What did I learn? And now I can move on to the next thing. So I don't wallow in the failures of goals that many times are arbitrary, many times aren't set by the employee. Yeah, I think that's where I'll stick with this. So this again, doesn't matter so much. We're going to chop wood and carry water, and we're going to call that 9,000 things, and what's a big salary to you, what's a big salary to someone else, doesn't matter. How do we bring our love and our full selves into the time we're generating money? And how do we bring our love and our full selves into the time we're hanging out with our family and our friends? And how do we, as humans, stay aligned on, I'm always going to be who I am. And these are just different settings for me to practice in.
That's great. So for those organizations and the people that are within those organizations, it's individual for the guides, for the guardians, for the sitters, whatever you want to call them, as you're saying, but for them and how they're approaching their, as you said, making sure that everybody understands, do we touch each other? Do we speak to each other? Do we, what those structures are, those boundaries are within, the organization, within the team, the people that are running it behind the scenes. I think, having a clarity of what those are, because we witness, some of that conflict in the back end as well, but also really beautiful relationships, within the organization and the people that are running it. And so I think that when maybe a cohort and, group that comes through, and maybe there's something that happened with one of the participants that affected everyone else, how do you handle those situations, and making sure that everyone's on the same page and how they want to handle it, and also communicating with the participants on, how to even handle those situations, but still feeling safe.
Yeah, I get that. So I think I answered your other question. I thought you were talking about like corporations and other types of organizations with the previous answer, but now I see what you're talking about. So I'm going to answer this question about ceremonial or underground organizations working, or even medical organizations working with these tools. I think the first thing I would tell that quote organizational, whoever are the leaders of that organization, is to remember it's a co-creation, that every ceremony or every medical intervention using psychedelics is a co-creation between the people in the room. And some of those people look like facilitators or guides or doctors or shaman, whatever you want to call those people. And some look like participants, but it is a co-creation of energy. It is a sharing experience. When something happens that is outside, and then it is really important to have clarity up front of what's the order of service. How do you run through a ceremony? And having clarity on that is helpful for the guides to know this is how we do things, and it's helpful for the participants to know this is what's going to happen. And then when a participant has something that happens outside of those bounds, having procedures in place. So sometimes that can look like, I'll give a ceremonial example. I can't sit in this room anymore. I need to get out of the noise and go somewhere quiet. Great. That's why there are sitters or guardians in the room, so they can accompany that person outside of the room. I'm going to process. I need to start talking. Well, in the group ceremonial space, that's not appropriate typically. So again, a sitter can come with them, but then that sitter knowing you're not there to fix them. You're not there to do therapy. You're there to listen and let them process. Nod your head. Make sure that they feel heard, but not to solve. That's, again, an ideology. Maybe others would disagree. Others might say, no, you're there to provide therapy, and it is a medical environment, and that's what they want. Great. Not right or wrong, what's right for you. If someone has an adverse medical event, so let's, again, most of the time, when we talk, I'm going to stick with psilocybin for a moment, because that's one that multiple studies have said it's non-toxic and non-addictive. So the probability of having an adverse medical event because of the psilocybin is very low. That's different than maybe MDMA or ayahuasca, which is a little stronger, still low, but more possible. But life happens. So someone who's 75 and exercising can have a medical event. And someone who's 75 just could have a medical event. And when they have a medical event while on a psychedelic, it's more complicated for them and complicated for the providers. So knowing what are you going to do on site? How fast are you going to escalate? When do you call 911? What do you say when you bring them to the hospital? How do you get them the care that they need? Those things need to be thought of in advance. And an emergency action plan of some sort needs to be in place. And that's, again, for the safety of the providers and the safety of the participants and the safety of the community. So we could probably spend 3 hours just on this topic, Courtney, but that's those are some initial thoughts for how organizations can think about their responsibility in the co-creation of community entheogenic or psychedelic experiences. Yeah, that's how they can think about that.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really helpful because and the other question I think is really understanding that there are different psychedelics and knowing which one do I try first? Do I try psilocybin? Do I try ayahuasca? Do I try, insert, a number of other modalities, solutions, entheogens. Am I even pronouncing that correctly?
Entheogens. Yeah, you're doing it. Yeah.
But which one would you recommend if someone were to try like their first one? I mean, does it matter? Is it just depend on who they're going with that they were to do it on their own? Because some people I know started off with ayahuasca, then they went to psilocybin, and they're like, oh, this one was way more powerful. And then I heard the opposite. They started with psilocybin and then went to ayahuasca, and they're like, oh no, that was more powerful. So it just kind of is interesting. And in your experience, if someone were to just try the first intro into this space.
Yeah, where do they start? I love that I think the key word, those introductions. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to constantly remind us that we have a Western mentality often. I have a Western mentality where I think I'm going to take this pill, this thing, and it's going to cure me. It's going to do something for me, and it's a one and done. What I've learned when it comes to entheogens, when it comes to psychedelics, is it's more of developing a relationship with the plant that from time to time people return, and that frequency varies depending on the person and the reason they're doing it and the dosage in which they're using it. For somebody, and so then which one do we start with? Well, one way to answer that is, what are you willing to do? If you're only looking for a medical experience, then your option's ketamine, which is technically not even a psychedelic, but it's close enough for this purpose. So if that's what you want, that's ketamine, or it's a clinical trial. Or if you happen to live in Oregon, there's some treatment centers there, soon to be Colorado, soon to be New Mexico. For those who want something else, I tend to say, like, well, what are you drawn towards? Did you watch Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, and you were drawn more to episode 2 with psilocybin than the one on MDMA? Great, go with psilocybin. You're a veteran and you signed up for Heroic Hearts or the Mission Within or Vets, and they're going to send you down to South America to experience ayahuasca. Amazing. Good for you. It's going to be beautiful and hard and all the things. I'm a couple, and I found a therapist who works with MDMA, and the idea of a heart opener so that I can look at my partner and say, I love you so much, and when you do this, I feel that. And for them to be able to hear me in a way that they haven't heard me before and respond, oh my God, I love you so much, and when I didn't realize, I didn't understand. I've heard you, but I didn't hear you. And for them to be able to respond because we're both feeling love, tremendous love for ourselves and for others. Amazing. Victims of sexual trauma or treatment-resistant PTSD have found great luck, their success with MDMA as well, and with psilocybin. People at end of life, psilocybin is again, study after study. So I feel like I'm sorry, and then one more that is important. For opioid disorder specifically, iboga or ibogaine is kind of the best bet. So it depends on who you are, it depends on what you're trying to achieve, and it depends on where you're being called, because there's no right or wrong. It's just what's right for you and what's right for you now. And that might be different later, and that's perfectly okay, because you can't do it wrong. You can only do it wrong by not paying attention to source, set, and setting, and having an outcome that is not optimal with the life you're leading.
That's a great way to look at it. Which it just really doesn't matter. Just try one and then see how you interact with it. And if you're in a couple, you want to learn how to love each other. It's a different approach than if you're looking for more overcoming, like ibogaine was obviously doing for a lot of people that are addicted to opioids, and which is honestly a epidemic that we're needing to address. So I think that it's great that we're there's an offering of
Mm-hmm.
different solutions that people can experiment with depending upon what it is, what kind of outcome or what the intention is that they're wanting to address. And I think that that's a great way to look at it. Because I was not sure, like, which way do I go? Where to begin? And how do I approach this? And I didn't know all the different offerings and how they're
Mm-hmm.
clinically tested. And I think that, and I really love how you've put these books together to help guide people before know what to anticipate. And I think it's really helpful for people to just even know where to begin. So if
Can I
you were,
stick with that for a second? Just I want to bring a little bit of context. Just one other thing for your audience to consider. And this is an elder I work with has shown me this, and I think this is fascinating. So I'm going to share it with you. 20 years of clinical trials, last 20 years, maybe 5,000 people worldwide have had a psychedelic experience through a clinical trial. The state of Oregon, with their therapeutic centers, it's going to take about 3 years for 20,000 people to go through their program. When we talk about legalizing MDMA or psilocybin, which we see so much about in the news, each of those programs, because of their different constraints and how to get them to market, about 3 years before they're doing about 100,000 people a year. And then according to the RAND report, in America last year, 8 million people tried psilocybin and 2 million people had LSD. And if we take away microdosing, so full psychedelic experiences, it's roughly 5 million people last year in America using these tools. Almost 50% said they were doing it for spiritual purposes. I bring this up as just a gentle reminder for you and for me that by a significant factor, we are using psilocybin and LSD in this country, and the real knowledge isn't in the academic institutions, although what they have is amazing. I'm glad that they are validating what the medicine carriers have always known. But these medicine carriers have continued to serve the medicine year after year at great risk to themselves, and we have not seen, there's 3 fatalities ever documented due to psilocybin. Last year, there was, I think, 458, or in a recent year, deaths by acetaminophen, the active ingredient in Tylenol, in America in 1 year. So just, yes, we have amazing clinical trials. And
great way to put things in perspective.
Yeah, just keep this in mind. There's a lot of people using these tools. There's a lot of knowledge in the underground that I so hope can come up. I so hope we can have a collaboration between the spiritual and the medical that is above ground, so we can all share this information without fear of persecution, without fear of prosecution, without fear of losing our licenses. But we need our laws to change to allow that to happen. And we need, as humans, as North American tribesmen and women, as people walking our path, to say, this is my birthright. I don't have to go very far back in my lineage to find people who worked with plants. I get to do this.
I think that is something that we've all recognized that has been taken away from so many people, that this is part of their heritage, but it's now enabling them to go back to the path of leveraging plant medicine to be a healing source, and a powerful one at that, for different people and their different agendas to do so, whatever that could be. But I think it's really amazing. If you were to leave, a message for somebody that is really just wanting to find a place, a solution that would help them kind of know what the first step would be to finding if this is right for them, what would you guide them to begin? What information, what tools to help educate them on even determining which ones to experiment with?
So I think I would say to your listener, who is 45 minutes into this podcast or 50 minutes into this podcast, who is listening, that of course you are a thoughtful person. Of course you are a wise person. Of course you care about your body and your life. And of course you're trying to you're hungry for alignment. You're hungry for satisfaction. You're hungry for community. You're hungry for love. Of course you are. That's why you're still listening. So for you, listener, the ceremony's already started. This is part of it. So now, trust your instincts. If you want to read some more, sure, pick up Beginner's Guide to Psychedelics or the Veteran's Guide to Psychedelics, or pick up Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind. Or if I'm not a reader, go watch the Netflix series. But you're already doing it. You're already gathered a ton of information. Trust your instincts, trust your voice, trust your knowledge, and then find a path that feels right for you, that feels comfortable. No rush, no fear of missing out. You're slowing down as it is, but find the path that feels right for you. And that might look like a medical environment, and it might look like a ceremonial environment. It might look like flying somewhere else and going to retreat. All three are fine. Trust the path that feels right to you for now, knowing that then after that experience, you can always try something different, or you can go deeper.
That's good. That's great. Thank you so much, Matt. This has been so helpful just to help me, know what next step could take in this journey of finding healing, finding clarity, having their intentions of life, and how we approach it, and how we really are able to walk into life in a more conscious, more mindful, more self-aware, and recognizing the abundance around us, even when we sometimes forget, as you said at the very beginning. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate these questions. I appreciate the way this conversation, all the twists and turns, the way it took, and I just appreciate the way you're thinking about this. And happy to. I love this conversation. Looking forward to more with you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and share with a friend. Maybe their journey in psychedelics is a better way for them to see life in a different perspective, and healing and alternative ways for expanding consciousness and addressing trauma that maybe has happened in their life. Thanks so much for joining us.